Hey, good evening, everyone. Another Tuesday evening for hints and tips, looking at gaslighting in families. Really? Yeah, it goes on. And just want to say welcome to those who might be watching live, those who may be watching on catch up. It's really interesting that even weeks and months after I've done a broadcast, I still get the odd comment from somebody who's taking note of what is taking place. So welcome. So tonight we're looking at gaslighting families. I've done a whole series on gaslighting, which you can find on my Facebook page, on LinkedIn and YouTube. So my name is Delroy Hall. I'm a trained psychotherapist based in the north of England. Trained psychotherapist, over 30 years experience, in fact nearly 40 actually, teacher and trainer, and I have my own consultancy. So we're looking at tonight gaslighting in families. Why on earth would parents allegedly who love you want to treat you in a way that causes you to question reality and to question your perception? Well, who knows? I do know, and one thing I'll say, that families, the origin and the institution of the family can be absolutely incredible, where you flourish, where children grow, develop, and it's tight. And I'd like to think broader than the nuclear family. I'm kind of got to the place now where I think that the nuclear family is too small to raise children, hence the African term about it takes a whole village. But uncles and aunties and grandparents actually together combine to bring up children. So that's kind of really important. So as I said before, but also before I go on to that, families, as great as they are, they can be places of terror, places of torment. And obviously my work over the years, I've just heard some serious families. One student said to me many years ago, he likened his family to the Addams family. Need I say more? And I've known over the years of students who, when they have this long break during the summer and they only go home for 2 or 3 days, come back to their accommodation in whatever city it is, spend the whole of the time on their own. Being on their own is better than being in their home where the family is. It's just terrible, really. So, definition of gaslighting, if you're just catching, if it's your first session, welcome. Hope you get something from it today. Basically, it's psychological methods and techniques that people use to cause another person, the gaslight to question their own sanity and perception of reality. A real kind of subtle form of kind of really messing up with people's heads. So there's a tendency to think of gaslighting purely in romantic relationships or in the workplace. And I said in the info that it's understandable in the workplace and relationships. No, it's not. It's not understandable at all. In one sense, it should not be taking place. And I, perhaps on my marketing, perhaps on the introduction, perhaps wasn't the right thing to say. It's not understandable at all. It shouldn't be taking place, but we know that it does. So there's a tendency for gaslighting happening in romantic relationships and so forth, but also in families. This is just an example how it can take, or the form it can take in a family. So you've got a sibling, could be older or younger. They earn more money than you, got a better job, and everything you do, they question. Now, of course, you could have been able to disentangle yourself from them, but at a younger age. But quite often it doesn't happen. So you've got a sibling, great job, earn more money than you, so they've got them driving nicer cars, they've got fancy things, and you go and meet, or they come around to your home reluctantly. You cook a really good meal and they criticize that. They criticize the car that you drive. They criticize the clothes that you wear. They criticize the friends that you keep. They criticize your social network. And if you're not careful, you begin to question your decisions around the friends that you have, and you can get on a real downer. And that happens. It does happen in families. I know it does. And I'm not talking about teenagers or kids. I'm talking about adults, even in people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even older, where they're in this family and they spend the whole life questioning what they're doing because of the chipping away from a sibling. So you can imagine what this chipping away does to us as human beings. It slowly chips away at who we are. And then what happens, if we are not careful and we've not got our minds made up, we then start to comply or to conform what people are saying, our siblings. And this is what I call it. When you comply, I term this idea compliant sadness. What you've done, you've given up your power, you've given up your right, you've given up your way of living to fit in. And when we do that, there is a sadness that accompanies that as well. Just want to check. Oh, good evening. Yes, good evening. See that you're back on it. If you do, I will be from time to time looking across. I've got two screens. So if you do pose a question, I will certainly give time for that. So you can imagine that this blending in, I call it compliant sadness. I kind of looked online today if there's any term, if there's such a term. There is sadness and compliance, but not the two. So sometimes complying, fitting in, not wanting to rock the boat, for me, it causes a sadness. And quite often, in fact, quite often the emotion behind anger, when people are angry all the time, is sadness. One of the things that when we continue to comply, we can become sad, because really who we are is, we actually push that to one side. So some of the signs of gaslighting. So here's some of the signs around power. I'm your father, I'm telling you what to do and you're going to do it. So that happens to children quite often, and that happens with, in fact, it can happen with mothers as well, whoever dominates the home. I'm your mother, you're going to listen to what I say, you're going to do what I say, you're going to wear what I tell you to wear. It even goes as far as work. I remembered working with a student many years ago now. Oh, maybe now 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It was a few sessions before Christmas. Come from a long line of lawyers, and she was incredibly nervous in the first session. Couldn't keep still, literally jittering around on the chair. And the fact of it is that long line of lawyers. She was trained to become a lawyer. Hated it, absolutely hated it. But the long story of it, that she actually was very brave. Spoke to her parents, and they were really good. They said to her, if you're not enjoying it, we don't want you to do that. So they were really good. But some families, of course, if you move away from what they say you should be doing, you've got a war on your hands. And sometimes some families, they never recover from you deciding to do what you want to do. So that's something to bear in mind. Another thing as well, in terms of form of gaslighting, can be this is incredible, really, but I know it happens. Parent has a child. Your friend, I don't want him back at this house. And have you realized that you're going to end up a deadbeat just like him and just like the rest of his friends? That type of comment, when in fact the person might not be a bad person at all, may come from another side of the town where the parent doesn't like people from that side of the town. It happens. Those type of comments, those critical comments, constantly driving at us, really does not do us any good at all. The emotions that follow or categorize gaslighting, you can imagine already. Humiliation. And now I'm not talking about an event that happens and then you're humiliated, but you can work through it. It's a relentless experience you have in your home growing up. So there's humiliation, there's destabilization, that the parents can't make their minds up. They tell you one thing and then you go with it, and then they tell you something else. So you're all over the place and you start to question, am I going mad or what? And this can happen from a very young age, and it just follows the family all the way through. You have experiences as a child, as a youngster, your experiences are minimized or trivialized. In fact, what happens by the time you get as a teenager, if the early experiences have been that your emotions have been trivialized or minimized, you then don't say anything to anybody. You suppress them, you sit on them, and that in itself causes problem. And the other thing which is really bad in families, you can feel attacked. Again, there can be sometimes that things happen, but if it's repeatedly a family experience in the home, that can be really difficult. One of the things I say to individuals, certainly younger people, because I need to get a sense of what it was like in the family. And sometimes some families are really dire. There's no two ways about it. But what I say to individuals, when I want to hear about the family, I don't want to point the finger, but I want to know of your experience being in that family. That's a very different thing than, because if you're just pointing the finger all the time and blaming mum and dad or blaming your chief carers, in a sense, you're still giving your power away. But I want to know, what was it like being in that household? Tell me your experience, and then that's something they can build on, and from there. But if it's just pointing at the parents all the time, nothing really moves. So it's really about how do you experience being raised in this home where Delroy was your dad. So that's really kind of key. And so you can imagine what type of things can happen to individuals when they're under this thing for a long time. Now, there's other types of things. Now, we're not going to go into this evening, of course, but there's different types of gaslighting in the family. There's a woman called Jonice Webb, who talks about the various gaslighting methods that takes place in the home. And I just want to talk about a couple today. She talks about the double bind family. So there's kind of characteristics. Double bind family, parents send conflicting messages to the children. So, and this is the situation. The conflicting message is this, and whatever the child chooses, it's wrong. That's a conflict, and the child works out pretty quickly, whatever I say, whatever I choose is going to be wrong. It's a lose-lose situation. The child can't win. Now, why parents want to do that, boy, I just didn't even know. Really don't know. Some of the things I've heard over the years, I just think, why would you do that to your children? So they say one thing, they say another thing. You have a choice. Whatever you choose, it's wrong. There's also a place whereby they can say nice things, but the body language says something else. Or sometimes they say nice things, but the tone tells you something different. That causes confusion certainly in a child's mind. Look, when things happen as adults, we really struggle. But in a child where sometimes they haven't got their cognition fully developed and they're not too sure what's going on, it can be really detrimental. Research has shown children who are raised in that type of home, the double bind, the lose-lose situation, children who are raised in such a home with such parenting style, they can develop borderline personality disorder, PTSD, or schizophrenia. You can imagine, can't you? There's this stuff that's going on where possible, parents, caregivers should provide a space, not with lots of material stuff, but it's safe, it's secure, because that's what children need. Something I read just today, that there's two things about children, that children fear abandonment, and children at a very young age believe that the world operates around them. And quite often what happens as children, we take on things which has nothing to do with us, it's to do with the people who are looking after us. But we take them on and then we conclude that we're bad. So one of the things I say to individuals, when, for example, children have experienced separation, sometimes what happens, parents don't tell the children what's taking place. The child feels bad, and then they create a story to match how they feel, and they grow up quite often thinking either they were the cause or they're just feeling really, really rotten, when in fact it's to do with the two adult carers in their lives and not them specifically. So that's really important. So children growing up in this environment, you can imagine what takes place. They learn to mistrust themselves and mistrust other people. Who can I trust when you spent your time from whatever age, few weeks, few months, few years, to a teenager, early 20s, in a household where there were so many conflicting messages, and whatever you chose was the wrong one? The other one I want to kind of talk on a little bit is called, as I call it, the seemingly perfect family. In this family, the facade is it's perfect. There's no room for humanity. There's no room for mistakes. everything is perfect. It's a facade that's presented to the world. Parents focus on achievement, and they call you to strive to be the best, to be liked by individuals. Now you know that is a recipe for disaster. I was talking to a friend a few months ago, and he said there was a particular young man he knew. The family had designs on him and what he was going to do, and he complied to a certain point, and then he had just had a massive breakdown. And I knew straight away what it was to do with. There was this reaction to what the pressures of the family. He wanted to do something else. He didn't want to do what they suggested he should do. He complied. So here he is complying with his body, and we can do it. We comply with our bodies, but our mind and our heart is actually somewhere else, and we're feeling the strain of it because we're suppressing who we really are and what we want to do. So that's really important in terms of the perfect family. And this is a kind of one of the signs of a perfect family. So you're working really hard at school or at college, and you get your results, you get 98%, and your parents crucify you for the 2%. They miss the bigger picture of 98%. You've passed with a distinction. In fact, the school has even given you an award because nobody's ever got to your marks. And what your parents focus on is the 2% that you miss. That is part of the perfect family. I recall, as I was putting my notes together, I recall when I was in therapy during my training, so over 30 years ago, my therapist told me, I can't remember how we got to this, but my therapist told me about a client that he had, a young girl who was 16 years old, brought to therapy for therapy, of course, went to see my therapist. So the therapist said to the father, could you wait in the waiting area and I will attend to your daughter? And over a period of time, so the parting words from the father to the therapist was, the family's fine, everybody's fine in the family, just she's odd. That's how he described his daughter. And my therapist at the time said to me, as he worked with her over a period of weeks and months, he realized it wasn't a nice family at all. It was a very dysfunctional family. And she was the most honest one in the family. She wasn't going to comply. And in reaction to the compliance, she developed an eating disorder because the food was, so you got parents dominating her life, and the only thing she could control was the food that she was taking in. And he did some really good work with her. So in adulthood, so children grow up in this environment. So in adulthood, how this is manifested is that the individual hides their humanness. So flaws, mistakes, shortcomings, they hide it. Reading something literally again this morning about a woman who married this guy, very much coming from a perfect family, a good Christian home, blah, 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 all that type of stuff. And then 5 years into the marriage, she finds out that he's addicted to pornography, and she had no idea whatsoever. But there was this facade that he'd learned from home, and it caused problems in the marriage, but they were able to work through it. So as an adult in this environment, you learn your humanity, you hide your flaws, you hide your humanness, suppress it, and cause major problems in relationships and health and so forth. So what can you do? What can you do? One of the things you can't do, once something has happened in your life, you can't unhappen it. And what I'm going to say next, I want to say kind of sensitively, but with a level of seriousness. What's happened, you can't unhappen, but you can do something about the present, you can do something about the future. And there's no easy fix. If you're in a home or in a house with your family, it's really hard to walk away. If it's a job, you can end it to a point. If you're, it depends how it is. If you're in a relationship, you can end it. But the family, it's a really hard fix. And I recall the last few years being at where I worked at the university. And again, I say this sensitively. I don't want to cause any offense. If anybody might be watching as a silent observer of this or scrolling, the amount of Asian women, when you looked on their form where it says family, it said estranged. They'd left their family. Now, Caribbean culture, English culture, if you leave your family, you can kind of get on. But Asian culture, if you leave the family, you leave the community, you leave the society. Major thing. So when I saw that, I knew then that this young woman, usually women, couldn't take any more. What I would say as a word of caution, and if anybody's listening, if you're in a deep conversation with an Asian woman who's thinking of leaving the family, what I would say, I would really encourage, I can't stop you, but can you find a place of safety wherever you're going to go? Because one of the things I've noticed that when you leave this, the shelter and protection of the culture of the society and community, you are then vulnerable. And you need people, a safe space that you can connect with, reorientate yourself so then you can move forward with a level of solidity. What I found quite often that women were open then to, I call them predators, who then knew that they were vulnerable, and instead of protecting them, they exploited them. So I just want you to be mindful of that. So what can you do? Honor your emotions. First thing you can do, honor your emotions. No one has the right or the power to tell you what you should feel or should not feel. That's including the family as well. So here's some examples. Your parent says to you, "Oh, you're so dramatic." Your response can be, having normal human emotions is normal. It's not dramatic at all. So what you're beginning to do, you're beginning to assert your authority. Now, assertion and aggression are two different things. Aggression, you want to hurt somebody and you use force and maybe violence. Assertion, you're expressing what you need. You don't need to raise your voice. You're saying what is. So you're so dramatic. No, having these emotions is perfectly normal. There's no drama whatsoever. It's assertive. Now, of course, in some cultures, you dare not answer back to parents. But quite often, if you get to the place whereby you can start to confront parents, it's quite interesting what can happen. Of course, parents can get more assertive, more aggressive, more violent, and then you are in for a show. But sometimes, they can kind of take back. They can step back by what you've said. Now, I've just seen something from Jenny. I'm not too sure. I don't think I can share it here on. Let me just try. I tried it last week. Let's have a look. Let's see if I can do that. Can I do it here? Oh yeah, there we go. Ooh. Yeah. So yeah. Can gaslighting in the family be a result of cultural expectations? Yeah, in other words, inherited cultural beliefs or expectation from a particular region? Yeah, if so, this may be difficult to get away from without leaving. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And she said the second part, without leaving the community. So I'll just show this bit. And then the final bit is, I think let me just do this. Okay, I asked the question. Okay, I asked the question before. Oh, right. Okay, no problem. Yeah, it's really difficult. It really is difficult. When you've got, and if you're not part of that, if you're not part of a tight-knit culture, you have very little understanding what it means to break away from it, because you really are on your own. Because it's not just your immediate. So, for example, Caribbean family, English family, if you have issues with your immediate family, you can perhaps go to an uncle or auntie or grandma who will put you up. But quite often in these cultures, if you walk away from the family, you walk from the whole family, you leave the extended family. It's as though you're shunned. So it's really, really difficult. Thank you very much, Jenny, for that question. Another thing can be, if the person can say to you, look, that never happened. What the response, Jonas Webb is saying, the response is, it happened to me, therefore it matters. People can tell you you shouldn't feel like that. It happened. It doesn't matter. It happened to me, so it matters. And I feel really strongly about this because I think over the years, things have happened to me and people, oh, you know, don't worry about it. You know, it doesn't matter. No, it happened to, and it happened and it matters because it hurt you and you're deeply bruised by it. It happened to me, therefore it matters. I feel strongly about that. I really do. What you can do, you can also opt out of the power struggle. One of the things, of course, if you know that people are gaslighting, no, not people, the carers are gaslighting you, and they want to engage in a conversation, I'm not prepared to have that conversation now and remain silent. You say it once, that's it. It's difficult. Your knees might be knocking, your heart might be really pounding away at your chest. But you're asserting, you're extending your voice, you're asserting who you are, you're asserting some power that you have left to say, I'm not going to engage with this conversation right now. And also I'd say, and this is really, really difficult, if you have a parent who's involved in gaslighting, try not to spend too much time with them. I shared already what happens with students I've known over the years. They literally, when I was in Leicester, when I started my training, I remember one particular student, long holidays in the summer, as you know, and not that he got a job to come back to in Leicester, but he went to his family home for 2 days, came back and spent the rest of the summer holidays in the accommodation on his own, because it was better for him to be there than at his home. So one of the things I'd like you to do as well in terms of your move forward, I've spoken about this before, but I want to speak about it again today. In those situations, you can't do anything about the past. You're a child, you're now an adult, you can do something about the present and the future. One of the things I would really encourage you to begin this process of is self-compassion. Learn to be kind to yourself. And one of the strategies of dealing with a gaslighting parent or parents or the home, if you had a friend who was experiencing that, what would you say to them? How would you support them? What would you be encouraging them to do? And if necessary, you put it on paper and then you exercise and apply what you would say to your friend. Christian Neff talks about this self-compassion. She talks about if some of us spoke to our friends the way that we talk to ourselves, we wouldn't have any friends left. So this whole thing about self-kindness is really, really important. One of the ways is imagine your friend who's going through this difficult situation. What would you say to them? How would you encourage them? How would you support them? What advice would you give to them? Put it on paper, and then you live it out yourself. I just want to say an assertion, this may be for another session. If you are a parent and you might have been listening to this and thinking, you know, I think I might be gaslighting my kids. It's a question to ask. Maybe something I've said is true that you realize that that's what's happening in the home. Your children have come to you, repeat about certain things, you cut them dead. Could be that as a parent, you're gaslighting your kids. And this is not about blame. There's a reason why it's happening, but you can do something about it. And if that's the case, DM me. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm really, really easy to get hold of. Delroy Hall, and obviously it'll be treated in the strictest confidence. I'd like to leave a quote. Viktor Frankl, Hungarian psychiatrist who was in Auschwitz, and you might think, Delroy, this is a bit steep, you know, gaslighting at Auschwitz. Here's my point. This is what he said. When you are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Some things happened when you were a child. You had no power. You're no longer a child. You're now a young adult, and adults, you can make decisions about your life. If it means going to see a therapist, do, because sometimes the stronghold on families and trying to pull away because the family knows they know our buttons, they know what to press. And families can be very toxic, they can be very corrosive, can be, as well as families, I said, can be really great, but they can be really awful places to be. So when you are no longer able to change the situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And I do like this one by Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. One of the things about growing, I read something today that if you want to be a bright light, you have to experience burning. And between a stimulus and a response is a space. And in that space, you choose what to do. And choosing what to do is, in a way, your pathway to growth and your freedom and liberation. Is it easy? As I say before, and I'm not man given to bad language, hell no, it's not. But it's possible. Get the support of a friend. Go and see a therapist. I have worked with individuals before who you just think to yourself, what has this person done in the family to be treated the way that they have been treated? You just can't work it out. You really can't work it out. It's not because, and one of the things about counseling, when you start working with individuals, if they're telling you porkies, you kind of know. There's a sense that, listen, this story is not hanging together, but you go through the story, you think to yourself, what has gone on in this family for this person to be treated the way that they had done? I remember doing some work with a woman many years ago, telephone counselling, so I don't know what she looks like. Obviously, I know her name. And there's a particular country that she liked, and she went there on holiday. And I think her clothes were still packed in her suitcase 3 or 4 weeks hence, hunkering to go back because the family treated her so badly. Whether or not she went back, I don't know. But all I said to her, if you do decide to go, because she really was on the cusp of leaving because the family treated her really, really badly, was to maybe once or twice a year, just send them a postcard to say that you're okay. You don't need to leave any address, but just let them know that you're okay. That's if you want to. So that's gaslighting families. It happens. There's a whole range of reasons why it happens. We've not got into the psychological processes of parents and what they're going through and why they put you through things. But there's things that you can do to get your freedom. As a child, you can't, but as a young adult, you can. I've known individuals who left home at a very young age because they could no longer take what was happening. It does happen, but it's really, really difficult. But if you're talking to somebody, please, and that's what you decide to do, seek help. Help is out there. Good help, professional help, help that really will help you to get yourself reorientated so you can begin a new life on your terms. Thank you all very much indeed for your time this evening. Gone over a bit longer than I wanted to, but hopefully you got something from this. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Wrap up warm. Obviously during the day it's nice, but wrap up warm, and enjoy the rest of your week. So thank you for the comments and questions. And yeah, if you find it helpful, please feel to share amongst kids, teenagers, young adults who might be going through difficult times. Please share it with them. Take care. Wish you well. Speak to you soon. All the best. Bye.